And so yeah, today I'm just going to tell you my story. So hopefully it's interesting, and I hope you learn at least one thing. And it's all about how I became a GSoW editor. And a long time ago, I like to think my skeptic mind started when I was a young child, though it really didn't come into fruition until later. But my first remembrance of being skeptical is asking my dad, is there really a Santa? And if there is a Santa Claus, why do all children not get presents? And this was a really proud moment for me, and I felt like I had reasoned my way to outsmarting my parents. So I really liked that. And my family was fairly skeptical, but not a lot as skeptical as maybe the rest of this group would be. And my journey did continue into university, where I went into science, and particularly mathematics. And the reason that I did that was because I didn't have to write any essays or labs. I was quite lazy. I did not consider myself a good writer. And so if you had told me then that I was going to become a Wikipedia editor, I would have laughed out loud. I would have said, there's no way. I would not have had any confidence in my writing. I still don't, but it doesn't matter. And so it did continue. My skeptical journey continued very, very slowly after that. I had 3 wonderful kids, and I really do credit them for pushing me along in this journey. And I want you to meet my oldest son, Graham. And he started talking about things called logical fallacies. And I was, what are logical fallacies? And apparently I committed a lot of them. And he was always questioning me and my husband's statements. He brought me skeptical books like 59 Seconds, Change Your Life in Under a Minute by Richard Wiseman, and The Homework Myth by Alfie Kohn. He's been really instrumental in my foray into skepticism, but my journey to becoming a Wikipedia editor actually began in 2015 when this happened. So my son Graham, who you just saw, was in a very serious car accident, and he was fine. He actually walked away from this thanks to the engineers at Ford. But we found ourselves in a position where we needed a car in a hurry. And we found what we wanted in Taber, Alberta. I'm from Canada, by the way. And it's a small community about a 3-hour drive from Calgary, where we live. And we asked Graham to drive us there and back because he was very nervous about getting behind the wheel after the accident, understandably. And during that 6 hours of driving, he insisted we listen to something that will calm him and make him feel more comfortable. And it's a podcast I heard him talk about, but I've never listened to myself. But I'm pretty sure everybody here knows about this podcast. And it's The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And we listened to this there and back, and we competed in science and fiction. I was hooked. I was so obsessed after this, I had to find everything out about this movement. And it led me to this blog here, Neurological Blog, which is written by Stephen Novella, which led me, of course, to science-based medicine. And particularly an article that was written by David Gorski called, it was about the Gary Null. And in the article, he mentioned this person named Susan Gerbic, who we just met, and I was not familiar with her. And within the article, it had this statement about what guerrilla skepticism was all about. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me was that sort of last line at the bottom there. And it says, why? Because evidence is cool. Why should we do this? We train, we mentor, join us. It sounded fun. It sounded like she had a bit of a sense of humor. And it seemed like something that I should try. I've been really frustrated by how little direct influence I seem to have on people's beliefs in pseudoscience. So I thought this might be a way to actually have some impact. My school was about to close. I'd been there, a teacher for over 30 years, and I was faced with the decision of having to work full-time at a new school or retire and do something else. I've been a high school math teacher for over 30 years, and while I love my job, I thought it was time to try something new. And so you met Susan Gerbic, but this is how I know her. The very first time I met her in person, she was actually wearing that third eye, and it was at SciCon 2018. And the chicken hat that she's wearing there, or the turkey hat, sorry, she was mowing her lawn in that last week for Thanksgiving. So she has a great sense of humor. She's a fun person to work with. And so within the group, I've talked with people from the UK, Australia, Germany, the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, South Africa, Mexico, Argentina, and of course the US and Canada. There's one other Canadian GSoW editor that I've gotten to know quite well. The editors in this group are really welcoming, and I've really learned a lot and no question is stupid. I can ask any question at all in the Secret Cabal. Everyone's respectful and helpful. And Susan is really available anytime. I can't believe it. I think the longest it's taken for her to return something was like an hour. And she's always getting back to me. It doesn't seem to matter the time of day. I think she doesn't stop working. Now, the training time expectations. This is done at your own pace, and it usually takes a certain length of time. Now, the shortest that has been recorded, and apparently this has been done by 2 people, is 4 days. So you can get through all the training if you really just spend no time doing anything else, and you can get it done in 4 days. However, the longest training, that's me, that was 18 months, and there is a reason for that. After I finished teaching, I started in June of 2018, and right up until when I was about to start my final project, yes, there is a final project, my health went south. I started experiencing chronic migraines and cluster headaches, and I couldn't even walk, let alone sit at a computer to complete my training. Susan and I stayed connected, and I would read all the updates, and so I still felt connected, but my training did stall. Normally, as she said, it can take about 2 months, but she wants it done within about 4 months, unless there's a specific reason. So there's lots of time. It's straightforward to do. It doesn't interfere with your life if you spread it out. It's very easy to do in 4 months. So I didn't edit for about a year, and when I was ready to do my final project when my health got better, thanks to science, I chose from a list of topics that Susan keeps for us trainees on science and skeptical topics that need a major overhaul on Wikipedia. Most of the topics are biographies of scientists or science communicators that need to be improved. These are relatively quick to do, but I was worried that after all the time away from my training, I needed a beefier project to get the process firmly implanted into my brain. So I chose a subject I really knew nothing about and that looked interesting and that had a warning on it that it would take some time and had been on the book since 2013. So in my view, haunted houses was something that was fictional and just appeared in movies. I didn't think it was a real thing. And I didn't really know that people believed it. So this is something that I thought I could learn something about. And I did. I learned a lot. So, Oh Canada, this is starting in my home country, where I incorrectly assumed that no one believed in haunted houses, because according to a poll just done this year, 40% of Canadian women and 25% of Canadian men actually state they believe in haunted houses. And this outlines the importance of a well-researched and documented Wikipedia page. Hopefully they find it and we'll read about it more. And during this time, this is unrelated to my page, I coincidentally read a novel, which I highly recommend, especially in Audible. It's amazing. And it's about a Canadian author, Lindsay Wong, and her family's belief in ghosts. It's called The Woo Woo. And it inspired me to look into haunted houses and ghost culture in Asia. And what I discovered from my research is that many Chinese take the issue of ghosts and hauntings very seriously. And so seriously that there is a real estate page for Hong Kong that has a database of haunted houses. Note that this page, and it says it lists 15 of 3,562 haunted houses. So there's a lot of haunted houses for sale. And most of the deaths that cause the haunting seem to be falling from tall buildings. But I was able to find one more recent example that was different. And it was a woman burnt and from charcoal and died. Not sure how that happens, but they do get into specific details on this website. So if you want a real deal in Chinese real estate, buy off this list provided by squarefoot.com, where people died from violent deaths. And these homes sell for approximately 15 to 20% less of market value. So another thing I learned in my investigation was that in Wuhan, China, a place we are now familiar with, that police have built a haunted house to train their police force by testing their nerves. They filled a dilapidated house with fake severed limbs, bones, skulls, and a frightening atmosphere that includes lightning and rain. Now the next house, hopefully you recognize, this is a pretty famous house, it's the Disney Haunted Mansion. Why is this significant? Well, when they built Disney Shanghai, the Disneyland Shanghai, which opened in 2016, it does not have the haunted mansion in it because of the local cultural beliefs about ghosts and hauntings. Building the house would have been considered a mockery of their fear. Next, we move to Japan, which has an interesting history regarding haunted houses. And this is the super scary Labyrinth of Fear Haunted Hospital. I love that name so much. I'm sure it's a bad translation, but it's a commercial haunted house, or I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, an obakayashiki. And they're considered to be some of the best commercial haunted houses in the world. Experiences include being chased by gore-covered zombies, specially themed attractions such as schools or hospital wards, houses from which one must escape within 60 minutes, or they're going to be found by slaughtering criminals. These are based on a tradition linked to Buddhism of creating ghost houses in August when it is believed that ancestral spirits may visit. People will go to these houses to listen to frightening stories or seek elaborate decorations and costumes to experience shivers as a way to feel cooler in the hot summer months, early version of air conditioning. And back to the super scary Labyrinth of Fear, this house claims to be the world's largest and most frightening haunted house, and it depicts horrifying visual scenes, shrill cries, moans, and smells in a hospital setting. When COVID's over, we'll all have to go. And I want you to meet my other two boys. You know, I mentioned one, I've got to mention the other two. And once I had finished my project, I asked my two sons and my husband to review my article because I was very nervous about this. It was a pretty big project. And then I posted the article in the Secret Cabal that Susan had talked about, and I was given a lot more helpful advice from seasoned editors. You're never alone when you belong to the GSoW, which is pretty cool. So I published the article, and then Susan reached out to this gentleman, Ben Radford, and he was the author of 2 of the books that I had read for my research, and he went over my page. This was a little overwhelming for me, a little frightening, very intimidating, and he contacted me directly and gave me more advice and some sources for improvement. And after many messages, I feel I've gained a new friend, which is really cool. And in the process, I learned about his podcast. So I've got to give a little shout out to that, called Squaring the Strange. And I keep on learning. I can't believe how much I'm learning about how to think from this podcast. It's wonderful. And the next thing is that happened after I published was my article got vandalized. I kind of feel like it really arrived this day. And it was vandalized on May 22nd, and it's shown in the blue highlight. And it's on my watch list. So I have this page on my watch list, so I get notified anytime there's even just a minor change, I will get notification. And vandalism usually occurs when a major event happens, such as the Super Bowl or after this last election. I'm sure there was lots of vandalism happening. And vandalism can be just one word, often it's profanity or swear word, or it can be whole sentences or a paragraph, as it was in my case. What really amazed me was how quickly this vandalism was reverted. And if you look here, it was 6:28 in the morning that it happened, and it was reverted immediately afterwards. And they have bots in Wikipedia, and this was actually reverted by a bot. If it had not been caught by a bot, it would have been caught by me because I do have it set on notifications. So my next edit, we already had this gentleman asking a question. This is Kenny Biddle. So I was asked to do a backward edit by Susan. And I added information from the article that Susan referred to earlier that Kenny Biddle wrote in Skeptical Inquirer about the New Zealand skeptic Jeanette Wilson, who she has also talked about, and showing the photographs to a group that Susan Gerbic was part of. And Wilson showed proof that ghosts and spirits were visiting us by showing several photographs. Biddle, on the other hand, had simple explanations other than spirit for each of them. For example, let's take a look at this. This is apparently a man walking his dog. I've never been able to see his dog. Might be my old eyes, I'm not sure. But you can see here, you can take a look, you can sort of see some legs. Now, according to Wilson, this represents a spirit that needed to be removed from the house, and of course it was at a cost. But since I'm an amateur photographer, I was really surprised to learn that people believe that these artifacts could be ghosts. I have accidentally and sometimes intentionally created ghosts myself. For example, here's a photo I took of the Chicago beam, and I used a long exposure. And those of you who understand photography will know what I'm talking about. It means the shutter is left open for seconds to minutes, and it captures as much light as possible. And the result, if people walk through the scene and stop, and then continue on, you'll get these images. So you can see here, there's a ghost there, I've got a ghost here, and there's another one over here. So I took this picture knowing that this could possibly happen. And at a workshop, a group of us, I like to do this pre-COVID, of course, and we had a group of us, we created some ghosts, and warning about the next slide, the ghosts are a little lewd. And so you can see here 5 people with flashlights, and we call it light painting. And we're painting the air while the photographers use a long exposure. And you see the spots on the side, so there's some spots over here. Now, Wilson would have said that these are the spirits of my dead grandparents, but I know that it's actually just floating bits of dust that are reflecting light. It's a very common artifact when you're doing nighttime photography. And I really had no idea until I read articles by Biddle and the books by Ben Radford that people took various anomalies like dust spots, lens flares, and see-through people from long exposures to be representative of ghosts and spirits. So learning all the time what is important. And, you know, I've heard people say, why bother with this low-hanging fruit? But just recently on my Nextdoor app, a woman posted a series of photos taken through her kitchen window where on only one picture, a fog mysteriously appeared through the middle of the sunrise photo where there was no fog outside. And there appeared a vague shape of a woman. And this was at sunset. So it was like a nighttime photography thing that she'd taken with her phone. And she was frightened. She was obviously frightened by her comments. And many people commented about how spooky and scary it was and how weird it was until there was somebody, they beat me to it because I was going to comment. Somebody actually said, well, no, this is essentially a reflection of the light on your window, and the person was probably her. And she said, well, why would it happen only on one photo and not the others? And he said, well, you just changed the angle of the camera slightly, and that's all it would take. So I think it's really important to point this out. Otherwise, this woman would have been frightened that her place may be haunted. So, because I'm a math teacher, let's talk stats. And here are the stats. We have something called the Stat Badger, which keeps track of the pages that we've done from scratch or we've done major overhauls on. Now, I took this screenshot on August 21st. I was very happy that I'd already had 43,000, almost 44,000 views by August 21st when I'd published it on March 13th. But what happens really when an event happens like Halloween, we get all-time total, as of this week, 145 views for that one page. And if you notice, I've also added a second page. I've done my second page completely. I've done lots of little edits in between. But I've a total of 155,313 total views. It feels really good to know that so many people are actually reading my work. And as you can see, with Yasmin Mohammed, I just want to give a little plug here. This is the first page that I wrote from scratch. Please do check it out. I'm not going to actually talk about her. And she is also going to be a speaker at an upcoming conference that I'll talk at the very end of the talk a little bit about. And I was really pleased that this did not get deleted for lack of notability. That was a bit of a concern. And Susan mentioned this briefly. This was a few days ago, not last night, like she gave the stats, but I like to be visual. I like to show things. So here you have all the editors, those 1,500 and some articles that were written. And this doesn't count for the small edits, only those that have been completely revamped. It's a lot of views. And that was started 5 years ago. That was the other thing. Stat Badger was started in 2015. So if you want to join us, and I highly recommend you do, I'll just give a very brief plug. She's already talked about this, friend her on Facebook. So what am I going to do next? My next projects, where I hope to go from here. The first thing that happened was I started participating in this psychic prediction project. I've been doing this for a few months, and that's with Richard Saunders from the Skeptic Zone. We get together every week to look at psychic predictions that have been made by Australian psychics since 2000. He's recorded them all from 2000 all the way up to 2020. And we have a lot of fun, and I've learned so much about Australia. And but sometimes the amount of reading that we have to wade through to find an actual prediction can be quite frustrating, as depicted by my next shot. That's him going crazy because of all the waffle that's happening. But I just want to say we do really look forward to getting together each week. And Richard does make sure it is always entertaining, as you can see. Some more projects, very briefly. Random Wikipedia edits, I do that not on a regular basis, a couple a month probably. But I'm going to revamp the spirit photography page. Now that I've gone down that rabbit hole and learned that this is actually a thing that people believe, I think it's really important to improve this page. It's a very small page at this point, and I'm going to update that. And apparently I'm going to be speaking at SkeptiCamp. Thanks, Rob Palmer. I got interrupted from my spirit photography page to do this.
Yeah, just a few more minutes. You've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm basically done. Thank you. And I'm going to be running a conference. Never done that before, so my skeptical activism hopefully keeps on going. And it's called the Western Canadian Reason Conference, and it's going to feature my good friend Susan Kerbick and Yasmin Mohammed, who I pictured earlier. So hopefully you can come. And another little plug, I am talking about the myths and stereotypes of Tourette syndrome and OCD on Monday night through the Atheist Society of Calgary. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. How's that? Did I finish okay, Mitch?
Okay. It's Q&A time, so you can stop your screen sharing. Let's see here. If anybody wants to ask a question, there is a raise hand feature under participants that you can use. Okay,
well, I have a question.
Okay, Spear has a question.
Yeah, actually, I'm a dentist here in the city, and I'm wondering if you guys have room for a dentist on your podcast, on GSoW to get involved. There's a lot of hokum about amalgam, fluoride, root canals, etc. So
that would be great. I'm sure
a little
Susan
busy
would
right
love.
now, but if I can get my taxes done by the end of this disastrous year, I'd like to have some free time and contribute.
No, that would be great.
Thanks. Great.
Yeah, I don't think we have any dentists, do we, Susan?
There's a podcast out there that is like 3 dentists, I believe.
Yeah, that's Grant Ritchie and
yeah, they're good. Richie's a friend of ours. I'm trying to remember if we have any other dentists. It seems like we had somebody who joined but didn't end up finish training that was a dentist, and I was so excited, and then I was really sad because there's so much woo out there on dentists.
What's the training like? I mean, what 4 days of what? Like, are you in a...
It's a lot of reading. There's little exercises you do to get you familiar with the coding that's used in Wikipedia. And, she gets you doing something very simple like adding a photo to start with, and then you start actually changing a few things. And then she teaches you about backwards editing, which is a lot easier than revamping a page. And the page that I chose was pretty extensive and is very unusual. Most people choose something that they could do in a couple days. It's not, as my project, I did it because I was off for a year. So don't be intimidated by that. It usually doesn't take that long. And so it's actually hands-on. It's very hands-on. You're actually on Wikipedia, learning the code, learning how to do things, learning what it looks like, looking at history, learning about what's called the talk page. It's funny, I've been to Wikipedia tons of times, never even noticed those little tabs at the top that say talk and history, and so it was really good to learn about that, and sometimes, it's kind of cool.
Sometimes it sounds intimidating when people say that many months, but I did it in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, people.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I put in the 4 days. That's sort of the minimum that can be done, but you have to be pretty focused to do it in 4 days. So if you're doing other things, you're not going to do it in 4 days.
The average is about 3 months. We ask that you finish in 4 months because we just don't want to have you there forever because it's a waste of everybody's time, especially mine because I handle all the training. And it's all over Google Documents and Facebook. So I apologize to those people who don't use Facebook. There are several people on our team who only use Facebook for GSoW, and it is the easiest way for us to be able to chat and communicate. Email and other places just do not work the same.
So somebody in the chats asked a question about We Can Reason, and we're doing it in person right now, May 15th, but it probably will be virtual. That's my guess.
And I guess if Ken Karp, if your question is quick, you can ask it. Ken Karp.
Yes, thanks. Very interesting. Anything with the name Guerilla sounds like an interesting endeavor to me. But in any case, the question is about protecting your own identity when you're going through this. You talked about vandalism. Do you use your real email address? How do you protect yourself?
You can use whatever name you like. I use something that is identifiable. My thing is AL Hill 42. So you probably could recognize me, but most people have things that are not recognizable. And people can email you, but they will never get your email address. So it's through Wikipedia, so it's a double blind. So if you email them back, you won't get their email address. And the rules are pretty strict. They're very strict about people giving you a hard time. If people get too mean, then they can be shut down, they can be kicked off. People think that anybody can go in and edit Wikipedia. Yes, that's true, but most edits don't stick because they have to follow certain guidelines. And that's what Susan does such a great job of teaching us, to make sure that our edits stick. But it's anonymous.
That's within the Wikipedia world, I guess, but people can connect dots outside that too. And I guess you have to have that in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah, and that's sort of what Susan does. She's organized a group that works outside. So if we have a question, we go to the secret cabal. So when I finished my article, I posted it in there so everybody could look at it and give me advice. Or if you have a question and say, I've never seen this before, what is this? They can answer it. Or there is a community within Wikipedia you can go to called the Tea House, and you can ask questions there as well. Go to the cabal. It's much simpler.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Adrienne.